Hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing this library tour. We're going around this room. If I figure out how to make a playlist, I'll make a playlist of all these library tours so that you don't have to watch all the videos to watch these videos. But we're going through this room, just the circumference of this room. I don't have any books stacked on the floor. I don't have any books, protruding into the room. So we're just going bookcase by bookcase. And we are now on this wall, the east wall, where we are doing, it's mostly history that we're doing. And there's no one uniform bookcase. There's no wall of bookcases. How I wish there were. How I wish I had 3 more bookcases to stack on top of the ones I have here to make a whole wall. So I didn't have stacks of books. Because every book deserves to be on a shelf, right? And every bookshelf dreams in their dark wooden hearts. They dream about being tall enough to kill their owners one day. These things can't do it. The worst they could do is break my ankle. But if the bookcases were this tall, and I wanted a book up here, ooh, the Merovingian Empire. And if the bookcase decided then to strike, well, it'd be all over for Steve. So we're working our way down this first bookcase, and this is going to be the last library tour of the week. I'll stop on Friday, and then I'll resume again on Monday. And that's good, because I'm going to need to rethink the logistics. Because I have the laptop. I'm filming on a laptop, and I have that stacked right here at eye level, and that's not going to work past this shelf. I'm going to have to find someplace else to put it. Something else to put it on. I'll figure it out. So we'll do just this one shelf. Considering that I have something to say about every one of these books, and considering that I'm a nattering old coot, we probably can't do more than one shelf in a day. So what is the first one? Okay, the first one is a UK trade paperback. I have a huge sweet spot for UK trade paperbacks, even of the same books that I'm getting for free in US trade paperbacks. And this is a good one. This is Dan Jones's History of the Plantagenets. A long dynasty in the English royal history that is, of course, overshadowed in its dramatic treatments and in his books by the Tudors. That itself is a relatively recent phenomenon. It was once upon a time possible to walk into an English royalty bookstore and not be confronted with 20 Tudor books for every one book on the Stuarts or the Plantagenets. But Dan Jones is really good. He's a really good popular historian. This is a perfect case of the book not telling me anything I didn't already know. But nevertheless, I loved it, and it was a great treat to review it here in the United States when it came to the United States. I'm assuming that I kept this trade paperback instead of the U.S. trade paperback because I like the look of it better. Okay, this is an advanced copy. This is from an advanced copy from 2008. I don't think I ever got a finished copy of this thing. But this is a book on the dogs of Camelot, which is pretty much a nuclear strike bullseye for as far as a Steve book goes. And this is just a book about the Kennedy family dogs. This is in Kennedy. If you read Kennedy biographies, this is a famous picture of a very young and very handsome and very skinny JFK with a tiny puppy that he and his enormous friend Lem Billings picked up while they were on vacation. And this photo is actually cropped and highly heightened. In the real photo, Lem Billings is right here, looking on and making Jack Kennedy look like a tiny little stick of a thing, which he was. But this is all about the Kennedy dogs. The Kennedys were always a big dog family, but not quite in the way that I am. Their attitude towards their dogs was a little bit patrician, same way as their attitude towards everything. The dogs were basically furry servants, but that's okay. Plenty of people think of their dogs that way. Okay, this is an older book. This is Kenneth Myrick. This is Sir Philip Sidney as a literary craftsman. An old trade paperback about Philip Sidney that I love, and I have underlined something on almost every page of this book, because not only is it eloquent, but it treats Philip Sidney for real. It treats him legitimately, adultly. Sidney is, of course, completely forgotten now. that weeping sound you hear is Wilson Shugart somewhere in the background saying no. But nevertheless, it's true. Spencer and Sidney are both completely forgotten. And for most of poetry history, in which they were alive and working, from their own day to the Victorian era, no one who knew literature would have said that was possible. They would have said, well, we don't have any idea if the world will even still be here in the year 2019. But if it is, and if anyone studies English literature, they will, of course, love and read to each other over wine at night in groups with friends, sometimes from memory, verses from Spenser and Sidney. And that isn't true. Spenser and Sidney are now just about as dead as you can get. So I loved reading this book. Just loved reading it. Okay, all right. I don't know what this is doing here. This is a trade paperback. I probably just stuck it here and forgot about it. This is David Shields, a very talented author, writing a misfire on a subject that has provoked many misfires. This is the trade paperback of Nobody Hates Trump More Than Trump. An Intervention is the pretentious subtitle. This is a study of Donald Trump, both his life and his presidency. And it's wrong in almost all of its personal assertions. Almost everything in this book is demonstrably wrong. It's beautifully written, but the demonstrable errors start with the title. the actual truth of the matter, and this has been true for a long time, and it is absolutely true no matter what you hear at convention rallies, it's absolutely true of his family as well. The actual truth of the line here is that nobody loves Donald Trump except Donald Trump. Everyone who knows him hates him. To some degree or another, everyone who knows him hates him. The ones that don't profess to hate him right away always have, if you see them interviewed, they always have that sort of schmarmy look on the face of the kid on the dorm floor who is bravest at handling a rattlesnake. He doesn't love the rattlesnake. He's not going to take the rattlesnake to bed with him. He's not going to cuddle with the thing. He likes the fact that he is thrilling the peons with being able to handle the thing in a way that they're afraid to do. But that is exactly how people close to Trump think of him, even his family, even his children, even his closest work associates over time. They know perfectly well that he doesn't love anyone but himself, and that they don't love him because there's nothing there to love. He's vicious, savage, petty, and completely opportunistic. They know perfectly well. His sons, his daughters, his son-in-law, everyone close to him knows that under relatively small amounts of pressure, he would sell them out completely. So the title is almost meant to evoke sympathy for this creature who has destroyed the United States. And that was a hard row to hoe. It didn't work on me at all. I'm not really sure why I kept the trade paperback, except I think for a while there I was toying with the idea of keeping all the Trump books, because this is a historic moment. This is a historic moment, a protracted moment in American history. The American presidency and the American experience ended when Barack Obama left office, and something else has started. And there's absolutely no use in quailing about that. I'm not saying that something else is entirely bad, and I'm not saying that it's going to happen overnight, but something ended when the last duly elected non-criminal president of the United States left office. And it didn't just happen in the Oval Office. It didn't just happen in the presidency. The one thing that I and many, many other people have been steadily, beadily watching, especially those of us who've known Donald Trump for decades, the one thing we have steadily, beadily been watching is for some sign of life in the Republican Party. A Republican Party that has had tenets it has stuck to for 100 years. And all of those tenets have been blown to pieces. And I'm not talking just about hatred of Bill Clinton or hatred of Barack Obama because he's black. I'm talking about governmental principles. That if you go back even 10 years and you go to a Republican convention of any kind and you say, okay, well, I'm new to the system, what separates you from the Democrats? The Republicans would have given you a list. It would have been about 5 or 6 items long. And all of them would have agreed on it, no matter how virulently they hated each other. And this president, who is neither Republican nor Democrat, he's Trump. That's the only thing he's for. That's the only thing he believes in. That's the only allegiance he's ever held. He has destroyed every one of that little list. Every item on that little list has been blown out of the water, and there's not been a word of resistance from the Republicans who control the government, who could rein him in at any time. Not one word of resistance. We are now on day 6 here in the United States. Day 6 of the President of the United States lying about the track of a killer hurricane, even to the extent of drawing a doodle on an official Weather Service map that seemed to purport to back up the lie that he said days before. Not only is mucking around with that map a crime, But the whole thing is an unbelievable, laughable sham that anyone could be so small or so petty that they would devote this much waking time, 6 days, to insisting that they were right about a mistake they made offhand. And that I don't care about, because Donald Trump has been doing that forever. Although I am going to care in a couple of days. In a couple of days, in a week, you're going to see the last shoe fall, the last fallout from this whole ridiculous Hurricane Sharpie Gate story. Right now, it looks like it's as bad as it could get. A fully grown adult taking a Sharpie and drawing on a National Weather Service map, which is a crime, in order to bolster his original mistaken claim that the storm was going to affect the state of Alabama. And then double down and tripling down and sticking with it, calling news reporters into the Oval Office in order to tell them, I was right about that. I was right about that. Not a word of sympathy for the people who have died during this storm. Not a word of sympathy for the people who are going through it right now, having their houses ripped apart. Just that, over and over again. And you might think, okay, that's as bad as this story gets, but that's not true. As bad as it gets is coming up. When the storm is gone, and the states that were involved and had $1 billion of damages, or the municipal authorities of the Bahamas, which were wiped clean and need desperate amounts of aid. They are a neighbor of ours. They have been a friend of ours. They're half an hour's drive away. In a week, when the storm is gone and people are starting to pick up the pieces, requests are going to start coming in to the White House for emergency aid. Totally routine thing. Democratic and Republican presidents from time immemorial have then immediately dispersed that aid. Of course, it's the humanitarian thing to do. Of course it is. Especially if it's the states in your own union. And that's not going to happen this time without a catch. And the catch is going to be that whoever requests that aid, that desperately needed aid for thousands of people who are without homes, without medicine, without electricity or washing water or anything like that, in order to get that aid, they're going to have to agree with the president's original mistake about Alabama. He is specifically going to say that I want you to hold a press conference, and I want you to say, this was originally going to hit Alabama, but it hit us instead. I want you to say that. If you say that, you get your money. If you don't say that, you don't. I don't care how many of you die. Watch and see. We're less than a week away from that development in this ridiculous, shameful story. But anyway, I've digressed, haven't I? All right, let's get back to history. This next one is Robin Lane Fox, the great biographer of Alexander the Great. This is Traveling Heroes, Greeks and Their Myths in the Epic Age of Homer. Somewhat formless rumination on the nature of Homeric age, the nature of Homeric myth, some fantastic insights in this about the brutality of battle. It's about food, about travel. Obviously, the title, Traveling Heroes. Lane Fox, for instance, makes the point that in the Iliad we're told about how fast the gods can travel. Apollo strides down from Olympus in 2 or 3 steps to afflict the Greeks in their camp. And we have many other instances where gods just sort of flash across the ocean in the time it takes to finish a sentence. And it doesn't strike us as anything because it seems like part of mythology, but Robin Lane Fox puts that in the context of how fast you could travel in the ancient world. And traveling comes up throughout this book in fascinating ways. How people traveled and what it meant and why it underscored the cardinal importance in ancient Greece of hospitality. That if someone, you have a house or a farm by the road and someone comes in, they are everything to you. You lavish them with everything. You don't just say, yeah, you're welcome, you can take a place in the barn. You welcome them to the table. They are everything. They run the feast. You will bankrupt yourself for them. And that's part of the reason, because travel was arduous. But just an endless storehouse of good stuff. This is a UK trade paperback that I had Traveling Heroes in an advanced copy and the finished copy. I think I wrote about it, or at least ranked it very highly that year in my raucous year-end book list. We're in September now. We're not that far away from Steve Reed's year-end read-up. Okay, this next one is George Dangerfield. This is also a UK trade paperback. This is The Strange Death of Liberal England. A beautifully, brilliantly written, just caustic, dripping in acid, just a beautiful, beautiful book about a small, what now would seem like a small detail in British history, where a bill had to be passed, and in order for it to be passed, there was either you had to muster the support for it, or you had to strong arm the king into creating I don't know, 200 peers, 200 peers out of nowhere in order to make a majority in the House of Lords. And from that thin gruel, Dangerfield makes a great book, just great. Wish that it were reprinted. I think I said this last time I held it up. I wish that it had a modern reprint. It is a classic of history writing. Okay, this is another UK trade paperback. Are we on a row for UK trade paperbacks? This is The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior by Paul Strathern, who has a new biography of the Borgias out now. This is a UK trade paperback of a group biography of his, of Machiavelli and Cesare Borgia and Leonardo da Vinci. And group biographies don't usually work for me, but especially since the author has to be kind of heavy-handed to make the themes work. But I thought this one did really well. The Renaissance tends to help with that. That's why you see so many group biographies of the Renaissance, including the all wonderful. I'm hoping that it's on the shelf somewhere. Men of the Renaissance. What a book! Oh my, 100 years older than this one, but still. Okay, this is an Oxford paperback. This is Sir Frank Stenton. We saw one of these before. I showed you yesterday. I showed you this. I showed you John Guy's Tudor England, which is one of a series of big fat trade paperbacks that Oxford put out, just sort of writing about different periods in English history. They did it for the whole of English history. I wish I had them all, but this is Anglo-Saxon England. A nice big fat book. Of course, there are going to be aspects of this that research will outdate almost as soon as the ink dries, but a good author will get around that. A good author will write about things that aren't going to change and larger themes, and this author does. So this is a book to reconsult. It is a book to reconsult. Oh my. Oh, this has notes and reviews stuck all through it. Oh, goodness. This is a fantastic book. Just fantastic. This is Stephen Grobard's The Presidents, also a UK trade paperback. I believe this is a UK trade paperback. This is the presidents in what we call the modern era. So McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, all the way to this goes all the way to George W. Bush, and has chapters on each and running themes throughout about what unites and divides them and what is interesting in each of their administrations. And it's terrific. Of course, there are a million books like this, but this one I recommend over almost all the others because of I say almost all the others because Nigel Hamilton, the great Nigel Hamilton, also wrote a book on the U.S. presidents in roughly this period, and it is terrific, just terrific. We're bound to get to it. It's got to be on the shelf somewhere. But this author is really good, really insightful, and puts a lot of things in calm perspective that are difficult to do. It's for those of us of a certain age, it's difficult to put Johnson's administration in perspective, or Nixon's for that matter, or George W. Bush. Or even those of us who were nose down in the news every day, George H.W. Bush. It's hard to put those in perspective. It's hard to be nice and calm and rational and distant about them. And this author does a great job. I keep going back to that book. I use it a lot because I write about presidents a lot. Okay, this is a UK trade paperback, of course. This is a book depository book. I watched BookTube for a long time before I joined BookTube, and I noticed that a lot of BookTubers use Book Depository. And because it has free shipping, I guess that's the reason. The shipping is very slow. But I tried it just because I wanted to be in with the in crowd, and I liked it. I liked the experience. The prices are usually reasonable, and the shipping is free and slow and unpredictable. So you order a book and then you forget what it is when it comes in the mail a long time later. You're pleasantly surprised. And I got this because I love this book. I read it when it came out and thought it was fantastic. This is Christopher Clark's book, The Sleepwalkers, which is about how Europe went into World War I, how it happened. Not just the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, but also everything before that and everything after that. So it's a well-known story. It's a often told story. But he tells it fantastically, just fantastically well. And I didn't have a copy, and I saw it on Book Depository, so I grabbed it. Okay, this is a UK trade paperback. I think it is. This might be American. Can't imagine why there would be a UK trade paperback. This is a bitter, biting book, but it's the one I've kept. I haven't kept many. I haven't kept many books on this president. I'm looking now to see how many I have. But anyway, this is Bill Salmon, and this is Misunderestimated. The President Battles Terrorism, Media Bias, and the Bush Haters. This is about George W. Bush, and the title is one of his innumerable rhetorical gaffes where he said, he used the term misunderestimated instead of underestimated. It was one of the many times where he embarrassed America on the world stage by not appearing to know how to speak, by not appearing to know words, and also by admitting in interviews just openly that he doesn't read, that his wife does the reading because she's a librarian. And now, if I were to reread this, I mean, I kept it. I will obviously reread it. And now, when I do that, of course, it will seem like the good old days. It'll seem, I'll get misty-eyed at how wonderful we had it under this disgrace of a president who started 2 open-ended wars and did his best to just, as in the current program of the current version of the Republican Party, he did his best to destroy the social safety net in America and every man for himself. He didn't succeed. He did succeed in launching the wars, and they've eaten up hundreds of thousands of lives, and there's no end in sight. And I would have thought then, during that administration, that things couldn't get worse. I would have been totally wrong. Anyone who thinks it was worse then than now is not putting enough importance in the intangibles, all of which are being destroyed or have been destroyed. So, well, what is the next president, the next U.S. president? I almost feel sorry for the next duly elected, especially Democratic U.S. president, because they're not going to be able to get anything done in their presidential agenda. All they're going to be doing is repair work. That's all they're going to be doing, if that repair work can be done. And the only reason why I don't feel sorry for a duly elected Democratic president is because there isn't going to be one. So Americans don't seem to have woken up to that idea yet. But we have 20, 30, 35, 40 more years of Trumps and their creatures. There are progeny, unless they're in jail, there are progeny just waiting to run for office. And there's a huge amount of gerrymandering that gives an enormous amount of voting power to the tiny minority of Americans who think they're the greatest thing that's ever happened to the world. Not just to America, but to the world. I actually was Skyping with someone yesterday who lives in a town with people who think that Donald Trump is God's chosen instrument on earth. They don't think he's human. They think he's more than human. They think he's a divine being. And you think, if you live anywhere sane, anywhere sensible, where political discussions can be held, you're thinking, oh, come on, they're trolling you. They don't really think that. But now my friend says, no, they really do. I used to know these people, and I don't know them anymore. It's exactly the experience of losing someone to a cult. So he can hold up a National Weather Service map with a Sharpie drawing a doodle on it to underscore his own mistake, and there will be people in this country who pay taxes, who raise children, who are normal in every other way, who will look at that and say, yeah, that's normal. Yeah, what was he supposed to do? If the Weather Service wasn't agreeing with him, what's he supposed to do? There I go ranting again. I will note it on the title that this contains political rants, so you can avoid it. So now we're at the last one. We're at the last one, thank God. And I don't anymore rant about ancient times. My anger has cooled. Oh, okay, all right. We end as we began. This is Dan Jones's The Plantagenets. This is the American trade paperback of Dan Jones's The Plantagenets, which will have a blurb by yours truly, I assume. I assume that's why I kept it. Why would I want to? Yes, this has a blurb by yours truly. Okay, so that's why I kept it. It's the same book. I have 2 different copies, and the reason I kept this one is because I'm blurbed in it. It's not that much uglier than the UK one, so I guess I can have them both. Oh my, this has not been a good library hall installment. All right, well we'll stop there. We'll go on to the next shelf on Monday, and I will, even if I encounter 5 Trump books in a row, I will control myself. It's just, we're on day 6 of talking about a child who doctored a map. Day 6. Storm is costing lives. It's costing billions of dollars in damage. This guy hasn't had a word to say about any of it. Doesn't care about any of it. All he cares about, bringing people into the Oval Office who have disasters to report on and saying, I want to talk for an hour here. I've got a clear schedule. I've told my fans over and over again, I got nothing to do. I want to talk for an hour about how I was right 5 days ago. I will wrap this up for now, but I will be back, hopefully with all of this out of my system. Thank you, Book 2.